Right now I'm going to show you some more things that you can do when combining vector and pixel masks. And I'm using the boy_Katara, and this is from the Chapter 6 folder in your assets. And I'm going to combine some images and use some of those keyboard shortcuts that I already discussed, but take them a little bit further with masks. So first of all, I am choosing Adobe Bridge. I'm going to open up the additional files. Just open. They're all PSDs. I'm going up to organize these images so that I can see all four up at the same time. Great. And then start dragging and putting these together. I'll start out with the background. And in fact, I'll go ahead and take my Move tool. And since I want the background to take up the entire image, I'm holding the Shift key down. Whoops. Let me make sure I click on it first. Holding the Shift key down as I drag it, and it will center it on top of this other layer. Now, it doesn't do me a whole lot of good there unless I plan on changing the transparency or opacity. So for right now, I'm dragging up my layers panel and I am going to put it behind. Now, I'm changing the name to background tan. I'm not calling it just background because that could be confusing. I'm holding down my Alt or Option key, double clicking on the word background to turn this into a layer. I am changing the name of the layer that has the boy on it to boy. And if you remember your keyboard shortcuts, you can press Command right bracket to move that bottom layer up or Control right bracket to move it up. Continuing on, I'm going to close this file up. You always want to close files as you use them, or else you're taking up a lot of extra memory that you might not have. I'm now taking in the guitar player. I click on this layer. I'm not centering him, so I can just take my Move tool and click and drag him on top of the other layer, and then close this file. And then one more, click on the headset, click. Now, here's one thing. I intentionally stopped because what I want to show you is that this file, headset, has a path on it. The reason I provided a path is so that you can work with a vector path without having to go through the trouble of creating your own, because I'm sure you already know how to do that. So before I drag this over, I want you to notice that in the Paths panel, there is a path, and I'm going to activate it. The reason I'm activating it is so that I can come over to my background layer, hold down my Option or Alt key, double click to turn this into a layer. In fact, I'll call this headset. And then I'm clicking on the Add Layer Mask, and I have no selection, so nothing will happen. And then I'm clicking on Add Vector Mask, which appears immediately after, so that I have two masks attached to this one particular layer. With the Move tool, I'm taking the layer over to my other image, grabbing it from the Layers panel, and then I'm closing this file up and I'm not saving it. Okay, so let's open this up a bit. And this headset's a little large. One thing you want to be careful of when you're working with vector masks is that if you just choose Command T or Control T to size this, notice what happens because I have an active path. Only my path will transform, which isn't exactly the effect I want. Maybe sometimes you want that effect. I'm pressing Command Z. I'm deactivating my transform by pressing Escape, and I'm clicking on the vector mask thumbnail to turn off or deactivate that path. Make sure that I am actually on the layer itself, Command T or Control T. And now notice I am transforming correctly now. Okay. We're going to make this so the boy is thinking of being the rock star. So I'm going to select the rock star layer and just move this gentleman up a little bit. I have now gone beyond my image area, which is not a problem because I can choose Image, Reveal All, and I can open up an additional area. Now I'll worry about the background layer and extending it. For right now, I just want to create a little bubble. Another opportunity for creating vector shapes is to use the Vector Shape tool. And I'm choosing that I want a custom shape, so I click on this last button. And if I click on the little arrow to the right of the shape drop-down menu, I can choose some custom shapes. Now, I want a talk bubble or a think bubble, and you actually have these provided as a preset if you want to access them by choosing the little arrow in the panel, and I can choose that I want talk bubbles. A dialog box comes up, and I want to choose to append to add them to my existing custom shapes. And I slide down and okay, this one's good right here. Click up on the top. And I'm just going to click and drag out a bubble. How did this work and it didn't create a shape? Well, I had set up in the options panel that I wanted that talk bubble to be a path. You want to make sure, because the default is to create a shape layer. If you actually created a shape layer, you want to ditch it. Make sure you're on paths and then click and drag out a path. Now, I have my active path here. You can see in my path window that I can reactivate my work path anytime I want. This is just simply a vector shape. I want to apply it to the active layer. So again, just like I did before, I could click on the Add Layer Mask and then click on it again to add the vector mask, or I can take advantage of the mask panel and then choose that I want to add a vector mask. And it just simply adds a vector mask with nothing else in between. The benefit to doing the Add Pixel Mask first is that I have created, when I created this little inner mask here, I've created the ability to also fade a silhouette. So with this particular mask, I can go in, choose my paintbrush, changing this to 2-column, pressing X to bring black to the front, and you'll notice that when I click on this mask, wherever I paint, I can see through, which is great. So I've got 2 masks on this. Now I'm going to undo this by pressing Command Z, and I might just take the gradient tool though instead and want to fade this. And it, again, is based upon my direction and how long I pull that fade. But again, I've got the ability to do a pixel mask and a vector mask. Now going back to this particular gentleman, you'll see that my mask is connected. There's a chain here. I can click on the chain so that I can take the move tool and I can reposition him within there. And perhaps I even want to transform him a little bit. I can even do that by pressing Command T, and I'm not transforming the path, I'm just transforming him. And press the return key or enter key when I'm done. Now I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to take my background. I'm pressing Command T. I'm going to stretch that up just a little bit. Hit the return key. And then I'm taking the boy, and I might want to fade him out a little bit. So in this case, I'll just click on the Add a Pixel Mask, take my gradient tool. Notice that if I click and drag a little bit up here, I only get that little bit showing. But if I click and drag down, I can have just that edge fading in. The really cool thing about using a method like this is that I can click and drag down further. And maybe I want to bring his head back. I can take my paintbrush. I can look at this area in the mask and hit X to make sure that I'm painting white to bring him back. So I've got everything else fading around him, but I'm actually bringing him back into the picture. I'm going to undo that and just do a real quick selection on just his face. And you can see that if I hold down my Option or Alt key, I can actually see this mask, and I can even clean it up further because now I can see where I've missed it. There we go. Great, so by combining vector masks and pixel masks, you can create some really interesting compositions.